fans, here we go with the main event of the evening.
Good evening and welcome to the FE Bar. I'm your host, Jack Jordan Maynard, and joining me tonight is Mr. Jack Pickering. Boy, do we have a show for you tonight as we will discuss where Nick Cassidy is going and who could replace him. Also, was George Russell right to oust Dan Ticktum after his collision with Max Verstappen? Plus, we'll look back on both races that took place in Shanghai. Remember, this is the only place where Formula E fans can have their say on the series you love. So join the Discord and make sure you get involved with the show. Mr. Pickering, how are we?
Oh, there we go. You went silent for a second there, and I was thinking, is this my cue? And then I got the end of Pickering. So yeah, no,
Yes.
Hello everyone. Good evening.
Good to have you.
Good. It was a decent weekend. Of setting alarms and
Yes.
then setting more alarms and then more alarms again. So yeah,
The change of time. The change of time on Sunday. I was like, oh,
It was
6 o'clock in the morning. I was like, no, don't do this to us.
And then I thought, okay, I'll fall asleep whilst watching FP3 or something, and then we couldn't watch FP3. So
thanks for the watch along. That came in handy.
Thank you very much to Josh Birch, who was the only one to keep most people informed during.
What was going on? Because there was no commentary.
Yourself, you popped in, and I'm assuming you popped in just to see if he had a feed. But,
No, I knew he didn't have a feed. He did have a feed, but I wasn't interested in watching it. It was more just, well, I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'll keep you company while we're the only people. And we managed to gain quite a couple of views for that. So I thought, rather than him struggling by himself, I thought I'd go and join him. And then once the feed went and the feed came in, then I was like, all right, cool. I'll leave it, and everyone else will going to go watch practice. So therefore, but yeah, it was just annoying with the rain. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because we'll get into the races and so forth. The races, I think, not overly a lot to talk about, but we'll start with Nick Cassidy, because I really want to start with this, because obviously we got to talk about the news of Nick Cassidy leaving Jaguar potentially. Now this is I know the race and Sam Smith is pretty good, right? And 8 to 9 times out of 10 he gets it right, but sometimes he gets it wrong. Right? And now this story, when it popped across everyone's social media feed, I have to be honest, I didn't understand. Didn't understand it, because I was like, why on earth would Nick Cassidy move from Jaguar to a Stellantis powered car? And the Stellantis powered cars at the minute are up in the air, because the whole Stellantis situation is up in the air. And I was like, where is he going to go? What were your thoughts on it when it came out?
It's certainly an interesting one. I think the thing is, Stellantis at the moment have got a better powertrain than Jaguar, which is a really sad thing to say. And actually, I will put it out there now. Huge Cass fan, and delighted that he won on Sunday, because he had such a torrid start to the season. He didn't even score points until Jeddah, and so honestly, it was great to see. It was great to see him win, but it was like, who jumped ship now from the races analysis, and we know Sam Smith is on the money 99.9% of the time, and he said that he would be teammate to Van Dorn at Maserati, so replacing Jake Hughes. But like you said, there is this speculation about what's happening there. Why doesn't that make sense?
Well, why would he do that? Like, why would he go from Jaguar to not Maserati potentially to Opel potentially?
Well, no.
Maserati's.
It'll be Maserati next season.
Yeah, I know, but long term,
So,
we're gonna assume
yeah.
we're going to assume he's gonna sign more than a 1 year deal, right? So the team
Yeah.
will probably become Opel. Now, we don't know what's happening with DS, and if they stay or if they go, because then that Opel team might become the only Stellantis team. But if that becomes the only Stellantis team, the man that is like contracted to them or is in a marriage with them is Jean-Eric Verne. So
Yeah.
is Jean-Eric Verne going to leave, or is Jean-Eric Verne going to be part of this Opel team and it's going to be Verne and Cassidy at Opel, maybe in Gen 4? That could be something interesting. But if it's Van Dorn, and maybe for one season, but if they only have one team left, if DS decide actually we're going to pull the plug and it's just going to be Opel as a Stellantis powered car in Formula E, then are we looking at a potential Gen 4 lineup of Jean-Eric Verne and Nick Cassidy?
I mean, like for me, I could only see Opel being the second Stellantis team. I believe DS will still be in Formula E in Gen 4. They just won't be with the Penske outfit. They will be with another. They will move on to their third team. In what three different
Yes. So obviously
generations.
Virgin Racing,
Yeah.
then the
Virgin, Techeetah,
and now Penske.
Yeah, but it's 4 and 4. So yeah, that's where my sort of head is at with that. But yeah, I think it's interesting that Cass has made this decision. I think if he's made this decision to leave, I think this is a decision that might have been made in that 2-month gap before in between Jeddah and Miami, because the thing is that if he replaces Hughes, then Hughes needs to find somewhere else to go, and Hughes, admittedly, he's not had a stellar year.
Done all right. But he hasn't done bad.
He's either been
compared
mega
to Van Dorn
or rubbish.
Yeah, but Van Dorn's been the same.
Compared to Van Dorn, he's been okay. But Van Dorn's been consistently in the points, whereas Jake has either been not he hasn't
consistently, but sometimes he's there and he scores big points.
He's been in the top 5 4 times, and then every other race he's been outside the points.
But he's to me, there's no difference to Van Dorn. I know Van Dorn might be picking up lower end points, but
Van Dorn's been constantly in the points throughout most of the season.
And he got the win,
so
but
far.
the only reason Van Dorn got that win was
he
luck.
got the win, and that was lucky.
That was luck.
By far, but Van Dorn has had a far better year than Jake Hughes this year. But
Yes.
Even then, I think that's so. I think that's harsh on Jake Hughes, who's moving to who only just moved to Maserati. So
It's I find it interesting.
And the thing is, it's not like Jaguar have someone to promote either.
Yeah.
They're not ousting him for someone else.
Yep.
And we've seen and we've had Toby on the pod last few weeks saying that Nissan are heavily looking at Mitch Evans for Gen 4, and so you sort of wonder what's really happening at the Jaguar team right now, because they've gone from the all dominant force in Formula E. James Barkley's leaving. Nick Cassidy looks like he's on the way out. Phil Charles went, what was it, two years ago now, to DS, and then so it's. I don't want to say it's
falling apart.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's falling apart, but it's the next generation of Jaguar is going to be very different to what we've seen for the past from Gen 2 onwards, because Gen 1 those 2 years they were getting their feet under the table, sorting stuff out, and then Gen 2 was when they properly was like, okay, here we go. Mitch was fighting for wins, and he's been in the fight, I think, every single year since.
Yeah, he's been in it for a long
6.
time.
Every single year he's gone into the final round since season 6 with a mathematical chance, and this year he's out of the fight mathematically after this weekend. So it's It's
I'm gonna put
insane.
it.
Like,
I'm gonna put it out there.
and yeah, I put it in the I put it in the chat. Moose Evans had his second best result of the season this weekend, and that was 14th.
Yeah, which was incredible. That was an incredible
remarkable.
set. But I'm gonna put this out there, right? Jaguar are losing their best driver. In my opinion, they're losing their best driver.
I think
right?
Cass and Evans are very, very
They're
close.
very close, but I think Cassidy's better.
I'd agree with that.
And you can tell from this season, right? When Jaguar have hit the struggle bus, right? The driver that has struggled the least has been Nick Cassidy, right? And has been able to pick up points, has been able to do something, right? And turn something into something and get the best out of it. I know Mitch won the first race of the season. Yes, again, kind of luck came his way for that first race, but he still done it. But since then, nothing's really happened. And Nick Cassidy, and I think Nick Cassidy's either a genius or he's the Fernando Alonso of Formula E, where he has the title chance to win titles and he's gone to the wrong team and it hasn't worked out and he's going to go to another team. Like he should have won it in Envision, right? Didn't. Should have won it in Jaguar. Didn't. Right?
When oh yeah, no,
yeah, Sebastian Buemi, right? Should have won it then.
I was
right?
trying to figure it out, yeah.
Should have won it then. Should have won it in season 10, right? Could easily be a back-to-back champion. And now he's going to leave to another team and fingers crossed, he's got his fingers crossed that going into Gen 4 Stellantis can pull something out of the bag, right? And be a quick team. Now this is where I think he could be a genius. I think the only thing that makes sense to me is he knows next season, right, Jaguar aren't going to be very good again. And he doesn't like sitting. He does not like sitting
Jaguar
and
can
waiting.
improve the software.
Right?
I think Jaguar will be closer next year.
Potentially. But he doesn't like sitting around, right? And why I think he might be a genius is this 2-year cycle. He is offset. So if he's clever and gets himself a 2-year contract at Stellantis, let's say. If he goes into Gen 4, does the season, if he goes into that first season of Gen 4 and they're not very good, his contract's up at the end of the season, which puts him in the marketplace to go to a top team who's performing well in Gen 4 for the second season to try and win that championship. Because he's gone, right, it's not going to happen here at Jaguar. And maybe there is. Maybe he's smelling James Barkley's leaving. Phil Charles is gone. Who's going to lead this team? Where's the direction going? He knows more than us. Right?
And where did Phil Charles go?
And he went to the Stellantis powertrain and if they stay, right? Who would he be contracted to, though? That's the big question mark. Is he contracted to Penske or is he contracted to DS? That's the next big question. We need to probably double check on that. But so those are the implications for Cassidy, and thinking, all right, so is the grass going to be green on the other side? But I think having the offset of not being locked into a 2-year contract potentially, and you've got that option to go, right, I'm available. You know how good I am. Sign me up and I'll get you a championship, or I'll help you win the team's championship. So that he could be a genius. But yeah, I struggle to understand it. I struggle to see where he'd fit, because he's going the Stellantis B team. I call Maserati at the minute, right? So he's not in the A team. That's going to be Gunther, and so you'd assume more resources would go into that team rather than the Maserati team. The Maserati team's going to be up in the air next season because financially transferring across to Opel, how's that going to work? They might not be that strong. They haven't been that strong this season. So, Nick Cassidy's going to sit around in the middle. I don't understand it at the minute. I think he's a safer bet to stay with Jaguar from the outside, but we obviously don't know what's the inside, because you would assume Jaguar could get it right for Gen 4. And if he goes to Stellantis and Jaguar have got it right for Gen 4, then that's the Fernando Alonso. He's just jumping ship, right, to try and find the best car possible, and he's getting it wrong. And he's not winning as many championships as what Fernando Alonso, people said Fernando Alonso should have won more than the championships that he's won. Nick Cassidy could be arguably that driver in Formula E where he could have won, he could be a double world champion at the minute, but he's got 0.
Yeah, Fernando, I think he had if he gets 8 points more, he wins 3 more championships or something like that. Yeah. I can't remember what the official stat is.
It's crazy.
But
he cost himself in Portland. The spin did cost him in the end. But he still had the mathematical chance going into. But it was it wasn't about him in London. If he didn't spin in Portland, it would have been all about him and making sure that he won it, and so forth. But the other thing, before we start taking calls, because the two big talking points that we wanted to talk about over the course of before we got all your calls in. So remember, !Discord. If you'd like to have your say on the show, we will be taking calls in about the next 5 or so minutes. So do come on. You will get on. Everyone will get on. We got to talk about what happened in yesterday's Formula One, because we didn't think we'd be talking about Formula One in this show, but then it was quite interesting because obviously the incident between George Russell and Max Verstappen, but then in the media, and I've got the quote here, right, and I don't know if George Russell, why he felt the need to bring Dan Ticktum into this, but the question was, it says, is there any other driver in the world that would do this? And George Russell goes, not in Formula One, maybe Formula E. Yeah, maybe one of the British drivers in Formula E. And I'm like, why? Like, why would you say that? Like, poor Dan Ticktum is trying his hardest, right, in my opinion, to reinvent himself, right? To kind of show you, this was who I was once upon a time, right? And he's done the documentary, and I know George Russell has not watched the documentary. We all know George Russell has not watched that documentary.
Yeah, got time for
right?
that.
So he hasn't seen it, to be fair. But Dan Ticktum's kind of invented himself. It was an incident that happened, 10 years ago. Right?
It was 10 years ago.
So, and you've decided to dig that out and add fuel to the fire in this Dan Ticktum thing. And fair play to Dan, came out with a great piece of audio. Basically, I knew Dan wouldn't care, right? And he took it all well in his stride. But I want to get your opinions, and we want your opinions on this and what you think with the Dan Ticktum situation. We'd love to hear from you guys and add to this.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, like, Dan came out with a perfect response to it. The thing is, like, his response, some people will twist that in different ways because it's Dan Ticktum, and that's the thing, and that's what's really annoying at the end of the day, because we've seen Dan become a better driver, and yes, occasion a better, like,
version of himself
thing. But like I've said it before on the show, the amount of times I've like read comments about the rookie drivers, do not media train them one bit. But the thing is, those same people will comment about Dan's incident 10 years ago and how he reacts to the media. Because, and there was the incident in Monaco where he said he wanted to punch someone for the team messing up his car. And and the thing is, people praise drivers for the heat of the moment, and the amount of backlash that there is for the swearing fines that Ben Sulayem's trying to implement, and like more and more people are wanting them to be brutally honest about everything. Dan is brutally honest about everything. He will not mince his words, but he and the thing is, but he's felt the brunt of when he hasn't minced his words, and he's had to reel that in a little bit over the years. And it's got to a point where I think that he's finally found like a happy medium. Mm-hmm. Yes, the comment in Monaco was a little bit over the line, but his response to yesterday's comment by George Russell was honestly fantastic. I thought it was I thought it was very tongue in cheek.
Of course,
but
Dan style.
It was very Dan, and I thought it was a very good sort of response to him. So Team Ticktum all the way.
Indeed. Right, we're gonna take some of your calls in a minute, and we'll probably add to that conversation a little bit later on. But first, I want to run through the championship standings, because obviously we did have two races. The first one was won by Maximilian Gunther. He's getting a good hang of these pit boost races. And talk about Dan Tickton there, he props up the table in 10th. We'll talk about the race a little bit later on, but this is how it looks after the doubleheader in Shanghai. So we've got Roland on 171, Pascal Wehrlein on 103. The most important thing about that is that the championship won't be decided in Jakarta. So good news for us, because we're in Berlin, and that's probably where it will be decided. De Costa there on 88, Barnard on 86. So it's kind of a tough weekend for him. We got in the podium, but then not working out in the second race. Verne and Gumpfer there on the 5th and 6th with 74, 71. Cassidy is up there in 7th now, 58. Nick De Vries, the sole Mahindra driver, now in there, 56. Jake Dennis on 56, and Dan Tickton propping up in 10th place. So that is where we are with the standings at the minute.
Honestly, I'm just going to say, who'd have thought coming into the season we'd be towards the final few races of the year and we'd have De Vries and Tickton in the top 10. It's just a stark difference from last year for both Mahindra and the Cooper Kiro. Obviously, they were ERT last year, but it's just so nice and refreshing to see them up there.
Yeah, and that old last season's Porsche powertrain definitely still working for them, and they're getting the hang of it now, I think. Well, let's get some calls in. Let's hear from Natalie. Natalie, how are you? You're on the FE bar.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good.
How good is it to finally see Nick Cassidy back on the top step?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because the thing is, you think in the context of this season, Nick Cassidy winning a race is sort of like an underdog story.
Yeah.
If you had told us that 12 months ago, that would you'd be thinking, on what world is that an underdog story? But yeah, no, it was honestly fantastic to see him up there.
Yeah. Like I was working Saturday, so I couldn't watch the race then, and then I just fell asleep Sunday mornings and missed that race. Woke up, saw the tweet, and I was like, it's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Well, I say a long time coming. It hasn't been coming because the car's been not good enough. But
I know.
For him, it was one of those races that was needed, right? A wet race, and the field spread was massive, right, for Nick Cassidy, because we had the rolling start. You were able to take attack mode straight away. Everybody went into attack mode, and attack mode wasn't powerful at all, which was really interesting. Even in the wet, that they really struggled. Some people did obviously make moves, but it was not as powerful as we've seen. And with the field spread, it was a standard race. It wasn't the most entertaining of races. It wasn't a great race, to be honest with you. So, which we're going to talk about the pack racing a little bit later on, and but then we have a race like that. So, what do we prefer? That's kind of the question that we want to sort of dig into a little bit later. But it was good for him, and I think he needed it. But what I found, and to talk about what we were talking about in the press conference, that's when I thought this story's true about him leaving Jaguar, because the way he was thanking everybody at the Jaguar, and he kind of referred to his time in the past tense with Jaguar, that I've had an amazing time while I've been here. It felt quite emotional from Nick Cassidy, so it does suggest that he's on the move. What do you make of it?
While it's surprising to read with the way the Jaguar's been performing over the last 18 months, it kind of doesn't surprise me either, because like you rightfully said, he could have been a double world champion. Season 9, Seb went up his backside, and Season 10, Jaguar made the wrong strategy calls.
Yeah. But, he also...
I'm going to mentally bank that for later.
But... terrible.
Sorry, I had to. The joke was there.
Terrible.
The joke was there. I go for it.
Terrible. Obviously, Season 10 he cost himself. I think that Portland spin, right, was like a big moment in where that championship, because then, as I said earlier, he would have gone into London, right, and Jaguar basically would have put the eggs in his basket to make sure he won the championship, rather than having two separate teams effectively that day.
I don't want this comment to sound controversial, But I always feel like Jaguar have prioritised Mitch no matter where Mitch was in the championship.
Mitch is their driver, but so is Nick. I don't think they did that too much last season with Nick, to be fair. I think since Nick's been there, he's outshone Mitch. I really do. I think Nick is just better in every way. I've hands down, I know Oliver Rowland at the minute is putting a big stamp on that, but I've said Nick Cassidy's the best driver in Formula E. And I stand by that.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong though, Nick is a good driver, and in wet races, he absolutely shines. Like, I don't know how he does it, but he just drives wet races to perfection.
Yeah, like.
But I just don't feel like he's been able to suit that Jaguar car at all over the past 2 years.
Well, he took to it like a duck to water last season. Like,
No,
he was quick out of the block.
I'd say, yeah, he jumped into Mitch's team and showed him how it's done. Because Sam Bird is no slouch whatsoever, and despite he had an early win in Diriyah, I think, in his first year with Jaguar.
Season 7,
And then after that, he couldn't really hold a candle to Mitch, whereas Nick's been able to. Has been there or thereabout with Mitch throughout his entire time with Jag. Obviously, it wasn't looking great at the start of the season, but he's now got over double the points of Mitch. Yeah, and like I said, like he's his second best result this year is a P14. And he got that on Sunday, and there's if honestly, if you had told me about a week ago there was one driver looking for an out at Jaguar, I would have put the house.
I would have put money on Mitch.
Yeah,
but yeah, it does surprise me.
Who do you think,
really does.
Who do you think replaces him? Who would you put in that Jaguar car?
That's the next question. Because who's their reserve driver at the minute? Is it Simon Evans? Or
no, is it Dillman?
Yeah,
is it Ericsson?
It's Tom Dillman.
I think it's Tom Dillman and
Tom Dillman and
not Marcus
Joel
Ericsson. What's the other one? Joel, that one.
None of them will get it.
Yeah,
none of them.
The thing is, there isn't. I don't see anyone in the current roster that would
willingly leave.
No, yeah, it would make sense for them to fill that slot. The only ones that really come to mind are Taylor Barnard, who we believe is contracted to the Ian James team for next year. We don't know what that guys will be because it's not going to be back.
Yeah.
But and then the other one that comes to mind is Dan Ticktum, and it's Jaguar, and obviously Dan's proven himself this year, but
yeah.
I'd say it's still somewhat of a risk
to
put Ticktum in that seat, because personally I don't see either of the Envision drivers, even though Seb Bremy's had a win this year, I don't see either.
I think Seb would leave to prioritise WEC and not move teams. That's what I think would happen with Seb.
Potentially.
Why do you think Dan Ticktum, Pico, can't go to Jaguar?
No, I think he could.
Why is it a risk? Why is it a risk?
I don't know. It just feels like it just feels risky to put him in that seat, and I don't know why. I can't explain it, but yes, a few years ago there was the whole like, oh, you wouldn't put him in front of a sponsor thing, but
which Roger Griffith said.
Yeah, but the fact that he brought Hero to Formula E and
has scored the majority of their points this season, if not all of them.
Yeah, it is all of them.
But he was always going to outshine David Beckman, was Dan Ticktum. I personally, I can't see Dan Ticktum going to Jaguar. I'd be surprised if Dan, not because I don't think he deserves the seat. I not that I don't think the image is right. I don't think it's anything to do with that. I just think Jaguar have got the opportunity now. You've got a blank canvas, and you've got some money, and you go and write a checkbook. And you approach. For me, is you go into a fight with Nissan and say, well, you sign Taylor Barnard.
You sign Taylor Barnard, we'll have Ollie Rowland or
no, it's
Norman.
not that, because Roland's Roland's Nissan. Roland ain't going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Roland's going anywhere.
Roland's not going anywhere. You're not doing. There's no swapsy deals here because they're not interlinked. The two teams aren't interlinked, so you can't do a swapsies, and that would never be a swap deal. That would never ever happen in the history of whatever. You go in and you say, right, whatever Nissan's go, we'll give you more, right? Or if what's going on, whatever if Nissan don't go for Taylor, then whatever you're being paid by the Ian James team, we'll pay you more, right? And you come drive for us.
Yeah, but they also have to pay off.
Yeah, of course. You pay them off.
Yes,
you pay out the contract.
100%. I think Jaguar would definitely want.
You pay out the contract and say, here you go, and here's an extra 20% on your wage.
The other question I've got is, because Taylor knows Ian very well, would he want to leave Ian's guys no matter? Would he want to do that if Ian's still in Formula E as a team principal?
Yes. I'm telling you right now, if Jaguar or Nissan knock at Taylor Barnard's door, he's gone. There's no way there's no way you don't say no. Why would you say no? You don't know what this team's going to be. You know what you're getting with Jaguar and Nissan.
The thing is, it's a factory contract versus a satellite contract. Let's put it. It's there is a lot more money being injected into it, and yes, we believe that Ian James team will stick around for next year, but they've also got to find the funds and the support to stay in Formula E for next season. I know that like Jeff and the entire Formula E team are helping them get everything sorted so that they're at least in for next season, and then let's see what happens in 2027 when Gen 4
26
when Gen
27 season.
Right.
Oh
yeah, it
Natalie,
is,
we have to let you go.
Before I go, did George Russell really need to do what he did yesterday? Because it's just adding fuel to the fire of the damn Tictum hate, and it was an incident that happened 10 years ago. I don't know why you felt the need to bring it up again yesterday. It's just childish.
It was a low blow. That's what I called it. A low blow. It was a low blow. It was not needed.
Yeah.
It was not needed, and it was a low blow from George.
It really was, because not only does it add the fuel to the fire of the Dan hate, it then makes all the Formula 1 fans come over to Formula E posts and just comment under them unnecessarily, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it's Formula E are laughing, right? And so is Dan Tictum, because he said thank you for the media boost or reputation boost, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for the publicity. That's the word you took it. Thank you, because and it's true. Like anything to get some publicity onto Formula E is not a bad thing. It was just cheap. It was a cheap shot, and I'm disappointed in George, for someone who is, the president of the Grand Prix Driver Association, who should be out there protecting drivers, and then, he's not in Dan Tictum's case. I know he's not in the same series, but it doesn't feel like that was a kind of George Russell move to do.
No, and yes, I know what Max did yesterday was unnecessary. As a Max fan myself, I'm admitting that. But what George, like you rightfully said, George is the president of the GPDA. Was that comment necessary? No.
Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. But I've got to let you go there, Ali, because we've got to try and get some others in.
Alrighty.
Right, but thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So, just a reminder. If you want to come on the show, !Discord in chat. It will take you to our Discord page. If you want to come on and have your say on who replaces Nick Cassidy, Nick Cassidy moving, the Dan Tictum stuff, anything about the races, do get on. You'll definitely come on. Let's get Jodie in. I've been waiting for Jodie. Jodie, you are on the FE bar. How are you? And
Hello.
I think we know what we want to talk about, and we've kind of left it for you.
Yes. Yes, Max Gunter, DS Penske.
What a day!
A
Oh,
nice day.
did they do anything at the weekend? I'm not sure.
No, nothing at all.
No, okay, fair enough.
Talk to me. Maximilian
I
Gunther,
think-
he's got a proper handle on these pit boost races because out of the 3 we've had, he's won 2 of them.
Yeah. Wait, yeah, have we had 3 or 4?
Don't tell me that we've had Monaco, Jeddah, and Tokyo. Oh, I forgot Tokyo. We're running.
Yeah.
So it's our 4th one. So he's won half of them.
Yeah, see, that works. Yeah, I think it was really great because we don't get a lot of 1-2 finishes in Formula E.
Yep.
I think the last one came kind of 13 months ago. It was Jaguar in Monaco.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've had some kind of 1-3s, 2-3s, 3-4s, whatever's.
Well, it took 4 years, I think it was, to get the first 1-2, and that was in
Yeah.
season 4 with Vernon Lotterer in
Yep.
Santiago. I think it was the
Correct.
very first.
Correct.
That is good memory.
Who got the first front row lockout?
First front row lockout, Edams.
Nope.
Was it not?
Nope.
Oh, I thought it was Edams in London.
There you go. Right. Let's see who gets it in right in chat. Put your answers down in chat.
Oh, was it Neo 333?
It was
It was Neo in Hong Kong.
in Hong Kong.
Was that the first one?
I
was
didn't
the
know
first
that one.
Swear.
Actually, you're right now because I'm thinking season 2 London.
No, it
But
was
then
season 2 London.
Season 2 London, which was
because the
Edams.
Yeah, because the two
then-
Renaults just didn't like
Unless
just went
they
very
went
slowly
straight.
into the first
But then
corner,
why
so that
is
Lucas
it
could
in the
smash
history
the back.
in the history books? It's written down as next DV Neo Hong Kong season 4 as the first front row lockout. I have to double check that, but you are right.
Unless someone had a penalty or something, that
Right.
could have.
I don't know.
ruined
No,
it,
no,
or-
it wasn't because
I don't know.
because Degrassi started 3rd in that season 2 race. So you're right. You were right with Edams. Because as soon as you said Edams, I was like London season 2, but then that's not what they say.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking the Edams in London
Anyway,
because they went into that first braking zone before you get to the pub very, very slowly.
yeah, they did, and
then-
Degrassi smashed into the back.
Yeah, no, it took Lucas unaware, so he went into the back.
But I very vividly remember Jack Nicholls saying that when Neo got the front row lockout in Hong Kong, this is the first ever front row
Maybe you
lockout.
should put in chat. London was P1 and P3, and Degrassi was P2. Did Prost have a better start?
So did Prost have a better start? I just imagine because you see. So
'Cause
I
it was
was
de-
I
they
was
were
right.
definitely
I
the
was
two-
right. You scared me there. I was right. I was right. Anyway, let's go back to Formula E and back to present day Formula E. Yeah, I'm a big Gunther fan, right? Pico will attest to this. Not as big as you,
Yes.
right? Because
Every single year he goes, yeah, Gunter's gonna.
well,
good.
because back in that, what was it? Was it DS? No, who was he at?
No,
Was it BMW?
It was when we went to pre-season testing,
And he was fastest in
And
5 out of
he-
6 days.
he was a pre-season testing merchant back then. He'd always top
So I said,
pre-season testing, and then he'd be there in the season.
yeah. So I said to him in London, he said, "You let me down. You were my pick for the championship, and you didn't do it." But he's got this in him, right, Gunther? And I suppose as a Gunther fan, maybe it's a bit frustrating that on a consistency basis, when he is on it and he's got it hooked up, he is unbeatable, and he proved that on Saturday. But then there's races where he just goes missing. Do you find that frustrating?
Yeah, I think it's just I don't know how to explain it, but like you look at his results from this season and he's got 3 retirements, and one of them was an incident with Da Costa, I think it was, and then 2 of them are technical issues with the
Yeah.
car. I think it's that thing of he's only got 2 non-points finishes. Ugh, I can't get the words out today. He's only
Yeah.
got 2 non-points finishes, but he doesn't have as many points as he potentially could have because of these technical issues as well, which
Yeah.
that adds to the frustration. I think that's going to be even worse
Yeah,
as kind of
he's-
this
well,
season
Jeff,
goes on, if it
Jeff's
carries
been
on.
more consistent. Jeff's been more consistent.
2 red
but-
cars doesn't help in my
Yeah.
one, does it?
Yeah, being
No.
quicker.
I think as well, if you look at where DS Penske are in the championship standings, they're kind of in a bit of a no man's land.
Yeah.
They're too far from Nissan, but they're just that bit ahead of McLaren. They're in the top three, and they've just got that bit over them. And I think that's kind of they could lose that if his inconsistency carries on, basically.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on Cassidy potentially going to a Stellantis powered, which is what the Penske car is powered by, team?
I think that could be interesting because especially if he replaces someone like Hughes, who I think Hughes can be a good driver, but he's also quite inconsistent to me, from what I understand of him.
Yep.
But I think kind of Stellantis could end up with four really, really strong drivers.
Yep.
But then there's that thing of if you have all these strong drivers who they all want to be number one, is that going to cause issues later down the line? If they're all fighting each other, what's the outcome there?
Yep. I suppose I still find it interesting. What do you want to say, Pico?
We're all wrong.
We're all
I just
wrong.
Yeah, because
When
yeah,
was the first front row lockout?
Toby put it so. Toby put the originally. So we got it wrong. So it was London, but
Yeah.
Toby then put something in chat that I noticed for a second, and then he deleted it, and I've just gone back to check it. 2015 Punta del Este.
Third race ever.
No, the third race in season 2. Jerome D'Ambrosio and Loic Deval were on the front row for Dragon.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
We had all forgotten about that. So
about that. Okay. I don't know why.
It just shows how rare it is. We don't know when they are because it doesn't happen that often.
It doesn't happen that often.
We forget.
Why did Jack Nicholls say that up the season 4? Because I just distinctly remember that, and everyone does remember.
He's technically wrong twice. Then
he said
he's wrong twice over.
And that's always stuck with me that was the first, because Jack Nicholls said that was the first ever front row lockout.
The thing is, so they weren't the quickest going into Super because it used to be
Super Bowl.
the original qualifying, and then you had Super Bowl where they went out in reverse order, and so yeah, Buemi and Degrassi were quickest in normal qualifying, and then they bottled their laps in Super Bowl, and it was Deval and Ambrosio. So
yeah.
Season 2, Race 1 in Beijing, Buemi P1, Prost P2.
All right, let's just end this. Let's just end this. We'll move on. We'll park this.
We're going back so many now.
Park it.
We will have a definitive answer by the end of the show.
We'll never ever talk about this topic ever again.
No.
Right, going back to Maximilian. What do you think's a good season for him? Is he having a good season, or what would you be happy with? What would be a good season for him by the end? What would you say that was a good season for Max?
I think, to be honest, just getting into the top 5 would be a great season for him. I'm just trying to check his results now to see if he has finished in the top 5 overall. He hasn't yet. His highest is 7th a couple of years ago. And I think he's well on his way there. He's getting the wins. He's got Jakarta's coming up next. And I remember a few seasons ago he took 2 poles, 1 win and a 3rd there.
Yep.
So it's a strong track for him, and it could be a chance for him to sort of gain an advantage over Verne and break into that top 5.
Oh yeah.
Comes Berlin and London, which I don't think he finished either of those races last year. So
yeah. He's been, I would say, Verne's best teammate for a little while, because obviously he had Van Dorn, and unfortunately Van Dorn coming in as champion, but just didn't get the ground running at all while he was at DS Penske. So I do think Gunther has definitely been Verne's strongest teammate for a good while, and which is good. And Gunther's always had these flash of the pan moments in terms of I remember when he was at BMW and that win in Santiago, and you had this feeling that he could go on, he could make that next step, right, and fight for a title. What do you think Gunther needs to do, or because he's still relatively young, right? What do you think for him to mount a title challenge? Is it just the car just needs to be in title contenders worthy? If he was in the Nissan, do you think he'd be fighting with Oliver Rowland? Or do you think he just needs to improve one or two elements?
I think some of it does lie with him. I do think he needs to kind of improve his consistency. And I think as well, sometimes calm down as a driver, like in his aggressiveness. Because I do recall quite a few moments in past seasons where he's got involved in something and it's kind of been he's come steaming into a corner and
Yeah.
hit someone else. And I think that maturity, but that comes with more and more experience, and I think he's getting better at that every year.
Yep.
But part of me does kind of feel like he might become the next Sam Bird and be someone
Okay.
who's kind of always
nearly
there
man.
but never quite wins it.
Yeah. I can see that. I can definitely see that with Max. I think he's a great driver. And, you know, great friend of the show. You know, came on and spoke to us all, which you missed, unfortunately.
Weren't
Didn't you?
here.
You missed.
Yeah, I missed. I was getting ready to go down to Silverstone, so
Yeah.
So surely there's more important things
Who
in life.
goes to
There's more
Silverstone?
important things in life.
Ah, yeah.
Once in a lifetime
place.
opportunity there,
Rubbish
Jodie.
place.
Once in a lifetime opportunity.
I'll be in London. I'll say hi.
Just say hi. We'll try and see if we can help arrange it. But to be fair, you might
I'm
be
just
able to
gonna
do
say
it
hi
yourself.
and run
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, hi and run away. No, but thanks very much for coming on though. It's a pleasure. We always love speaking with you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No
I'll try and
worries.
join more.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on more. We'd love to have you on.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
So,
Right. What? Just before we get another person on, I am just going to draw the line here. I put it in chat. Season 2, race 1 was the first front row lockout in Formula E. That is the end of the story. Thank you for watching. Good night.
good night. Let's talk. Let's talk a little bit on Jake Hughes because I'm wary of time and I'm also wary of time because I know we'll have Nick at 9 soon, so we'll probably take a break. So we'll have a little chatteroo about Jake Hughes.
Chatteroo?
Yeah, a chatteroo.
Ooh, very nice.
Wherever a chatteroo is. About Jake Hughes because
I think you've just invented that word.
I did.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that.
I love
ever.
inventing words. Is it harsh? But for motorsport is harsh. He's moved. I don't think he deserved to move from McLaren. If it was me, if I was Ian James, I know who my McLaren drivers would have been. It would have been Taylor Barnard and Jake Hughes. I would have said bye to Sam, right? But Sam obviously had a longer contract.
Sam had only just come in to the
but
team.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you're thinking about best drivers
like,
at the time,
my standpoint last year was I still thought it was a little too early for Taylor to come in. I've been proved very wrong this year, but yeah,
so
I mean, like Taylor's been fantastic, but
pretty much forced out of McLaren.
Hughes saw an opportunity.
Yeah,
I think Hughes saw an opportunity to move on, and
well, I think he was more forced out, but he found an opportunity.
Yeah,
and
I think that Hughesy's been all right at Maserati. He's had a very inconsistent season. He's either been top 5 or nowhere. But
what would you have expected from him in that car?
Just a bit more consistency. That's all.
But is that enough to say that he deserves to lose?
That is the only thing that I expect more. And yeah, no, it isn't. It isn't. For me, I wouldn't have expected Stellantis to have any option for next season for any other driver, and they've gone and signed Teo Porcher as a development driver as well. So
there's a lot of drivers who are pushing in for
unless they're gonna get a third team like Porsche have, then I don't I don't see why or how
But
Stellantis
it's
were even
not.
shopping
But
for other drivers, because
but
all four have been there or thereabout all year, and hang on, I'm trying to think.
but
Are they having the best sort of pack of four drivers? Because I wouldn't say Nissan are having the best pack of four drivers, because Natto's been underperforming. Jaguar have been Jaguar this year. Mahindra have been there or thereabout. They've only got two. Porsche, has there been an underperforming Porsche? I'd say Nico Muller's sort of underperformed
and
a
David
bit.
Beckman.
And David Beckman, yeah. So yeah, I'd say out of all the powertrains,
They've
the
got the form most
Stellantis,
consistent.
the Stellantis quadruple there, they've had the best. I'd say they've got the strongest lineup.
Yeah. So that's. But the thing is, right? If you get the phone call and Nick Cassidy's about, you snap him up, and that's the harsh reality. If Nick Cassidy, Tobias told us, that he was out of contract, right? So Maserati know that, and therefore have, gone, do you fancy it? And, maybe it's the other way around. Cassidy's agents have gone, actually, we're looking to move. And then we've gone, all right then, we'll sign you. Sorry, Jake, you've got a year contract.
Yeah.
You're the easiest to get rid of, if that's the case. So it's harsh. Do you think if Hughes loses his seat in Maserati, does he find another one, or is that him done?
I think there is a risk that he might be off the grid for next season, but I think he will. I think he should be able to find a space, even if it's a direct swap and he goes to Jaguar. I think that would sort of work okay, but yeah, I could see him potentially going to back to the Ian James team, because
Yep.
we're
They need a
kind of
space
expecting Sam to
So there's a space there.
But
available.
yeah,
Maybe the Taylor Barnard Jake Hughes team that I actually wanted could.
Yeah, no,
could
yeah, no.
end up
Maybe
there.
you get that just a year later. But yeah, it's honestly, like the silly season is always silly. It's that for a reason.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it'll be very interesting. And I think Formula E's one is sort of very kind of interesting, anyways. I think it'll be more interesting end of next year. But the thing is, we had this in season 9 as well, because we were sort of expecting most of the teams to have kind of the same lineup going from year 1 of Gen 3 to year 2 of Gen 3, and then it was the revelation broke that Sam was going to leave Jaguar to go to McLaren, and that opened up a whole can of worms of Cassidy going out and then try and switch back, and so yeah, it takes one piece of the puzzle to move.
A whole load of drivers.
Oh yeah, it becomes crazy, and so let chaos begin.
Let the chaos begin. So we are going to take a short break, and on the other side we will be joined by Nick Golding from Racing News 365. Remember, if you want to come on the show, !Discord, and you can get yourself in the waiting room, you will get on. So if you want to come talk anything from stories, or if there's something that we haven't discussed and you want to talk about, get yourself on the show. You can also have all our socials as well. It's all there. Instagram, TikTok, we're on all of them, so make sure you're following there as well. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. we are joined by Nick at 9. Hello, Mr. Golding. How are you?
Hello. I am tired. I think it's fair to say my voice is on the ropes a little bit. Thank you very much, Shanghai weather, and thank you very much, Max Verstappen. It's been a long and eventful weekend of a variety of hours working. But yeah, it was.
I can imagine.
Been a bit of a roller coaster one. Yeah, it's got to be said.
Yeah, the races in Formula E this weekend, they weren't amazing, and I do think even though we didn't collide with Formula One, I feel like we've been shunted in a sense in terms of like, no one's really worried about what's going on in the Formula E world because of what's happened in the Formula One world. I do think we have also been hit by a little bit of the scheduling conflicts.
I just want to throw something out there very quickly because like you said, the races weren't that good this year at Shanghai, but last year we were praising it for being some of the best of the season. So even though we did have a dry race with pit boost on Saturday, but that race was far worse than what we had 12 months ago.
I just think, I don't know what you think, Nick, but I don't know what you know about going into Gen 4 and if this type of racing can be stopped, because it was too much. You just don't know what's going on. People don't want to lead, but then you've got the final lap, and this is the offset, in my opinion, right? You've got the final lap where Jean-Eric Verne dives down the inside, takes 2 positions, makes it a 1-2, and people go, wow, what a race. You know, there was so much overtaking, it went down to the wire, what a race. But and you remember that last little bit, but how we got there was just terrible. It was mind-numbing, it was so frustrating. But then we have Sunday's race, which it's a bit different because we have the safety car start. They all go into attack mode, so they're all in attack mode at the same time, so it's like a DRS train. And it was boring. So then you're like, well, what do we want? Do we want a race where there's so much excitement it goes down to the last lap despite it being really terrible to watch, but then you got the excitement, or what we had on Sunday?
Which question do I start with? Right, okay, let's dissect all of this because there's so many points you just discussed. So let's start with is on Saturday and Sunday, because something you just said there, actually last season I was one of those who was really pleasantly surprised by Shanghai, the fact that it gave us, yes, 2 peloton races, but for me, 2 of the easiest to understand peloton races, which is the crucial factor there. Saturday, let's focus on the drive for a second, was just, I've been covering the series for years, watched it since day one. You know, I like to think of myself as somewhat of an expert, and I was absolutely baffled. I was lost. It was too confusing, and it goes back to something I said post Monaco. For me, having pit boost and attack mode, it's actually too much. It's one or the other, and it just becomes too complicated because you then have to try and remember how many attack modes people have used. So I have that on the pit boost. Yeah, it just becomes too much, and I think it also becomes in a way too much for the drivers. It's been spoken about very often that FE is one of the most mentally draining ships to race in because there is so much going on compared to, for example, Formula One. Very, very different. So I think that element, it was quite clearly proof that, it was just too much going on. The Sunday race, first things first, fair play to the FIA and FE because I was monitoring that weather as I always do from several days out, and the weather was shocking. 58 millimeters of rain they were forecast, which most other championships would have probably cancelled it before it even got to the day. The fact they managed to get on the first 7 minutes of FP3, somewhat of a quali session, and then the full race as well, I take my cap off because that must have been organisational nightmare. Only bugbear is why did they not do a standing start? If you have a standing start in that race, changes everything. Yes, overtaking would still be difficult, but you get that first lap jeopardy. Whereas, of course, what we saw is, Nick Cassidy, to his credit, it was a fantastic restart. Immediately had like 4 or 5 car lengths back to the Porsches, and then they had another 4 or 5 car lengths to the rest of the pack. So for me, in terms of the Saturday race, it was yet again proof that pit boost and attack mode together is too much. Sunday was proof that we need wet tyres, and can Gen 4 please just hurry up? Because obviously, as we know, Bridgestone, because of the performance of the cars, where they are going to get bigger, they're going to be more powerful, 600 kilowatts of power output, which is equivalent to 800 brake horsepower.
Yep.
As well as that, at the moment, from very private testing, it's the reports and the speculation that it's going very well, and that the expected speeds are close to, if not quicker, than a current Formula 2 car. And what's fascinating is you look at F1 and their new race for next year, they're going to get slower by a good few seconds. So you could see, if things go to plan, the lap time delta between F1 and FE really close up, which naturally, I've seen some comments, people saying that the FE races on the same time as F3. As we all know, if it's a fast car, getting attention in my eyes. If FE is that quick for season 13 and Gen 4, it's going to bring in more eyeballs and more people to watch. At the moment, are you going to tune in to watch a race you know is probably going to confuse you? The only thing which concerns me is it's going to be the same next season. Jakarta will be a bit different, but actually, if I remember correctly, when we had Jakarta back in, would have been season 9.
Yep.
The last time we were there. It was quite a boring race, if I remember correctly, both of them, because it's so hot, so humid, it's really difficult to overtake. So I think we'll probably get the same next season. Gen 4, for me, again, FE are being quite tight-lipped, and rightly so, on the details, because it is still very much early days. The manufacturers won't start testing until around September time, is what I'm hearing. So at the moment, it's literally just those who are building the car itself and responsible for all the parts who are doing the private testing with James Rossiter. So it's sounding good, and that's the best thing. And hopefully, bigger cars, faster cars might give us probably less overtaking, but in my eyes, a more natural race, if that makes sense. Because I think if you have, for example, a car that's maybe the same size as an F2 car, can you then, for safety reasons, have a peloton race, so to speak? I think so. But for me, the big thing is, yet again, pit boost and attack mode. Separately, great. Together, it just doesn't work. And I would like to see them do a race with no attack mode and just pit boost.
Yeah, I've banged on about they need to fiddle with the schedule for Gen 4. But yeah, no, I'd like to see just one race. I'd like to see a sprint race with attack mode, because the thing is, what we saw on Saturday was the first 20 laps were so difficult and hard to follow and mayhem. But the last 5 laps of the race, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the last few laps, but I really hate the first 20. And it made me think that if Formula E gave them enough energy to do the race that they could actually race, instead of have this thing where they go out sit in first for a bit, and then then go, do you know what? I'm not finding leading interesting. I need to serve more energy. I'm going to go sit in 7th for a bit. Which there isn't a single motor racing series in the world that does that. The closest one that you get is probably Moto 3, but they're 16, 17-year-olds who with hot heads, and they all want to lead at some point. So
We have the same, just in 22, 23-year-olds. No, but it is like, it's a really good point, because I think a good way of putting it is essentially the first 20, 25 laps, for example. It's almost a bit of a procession in many ways, because nobody wants to lead. It's very much just, okay, I'll lead this lap, okay, you now lead the next lap, and it's back and forth. And people can cycle from 20th to the front in no time at all. I mean, Dan Ticktum, to give him credit, awesome drive.
21st to 4th.
Went from 21st to 4th, which, of course, an amazing drive. And of course, that's made possible because of the style of racing it is. And of course, he also saved energy as well. But so much of that is because of just the peloton race and how it plays out. If that's pretty much any other category where outright pace is a bigger factor, you're not going to do that unless you're, for example, a driver who qualified on pole and got a 20-place grid penalty.
Yeah.
Those kind of situations are made possible because of the peloton. So I think there's so many ways of looking at it, but for me, it's just, I don't enjoy the pelotons. I enjoy the Shanghai circuit. I think it's actually quite good for FE, and it was, particularly in qualifying, really good fun seeing the drivers really pushing themselves on a circuit, because there was the room, especially them drifting around turn 7, really quickly changing the direction, even in the wet, to be honest, where it looks a real handful, the cars, particularly with onboards of one driver at a time, looked really good. It was so good, especially, even when they were spinning, but you could see then the speeds they were genuinely carrying. So I think, kind of as always, lots of lessons to be learnt, but most importantly, we got 2 races. It's just going to be a case, I feel, of let's just get to Gen 4. I think we know, and it was well documented. We've discussed it on here many a times over the last, 18 months or so. The introduction of Gen 3 wasn't good. It was rushed. Things were happening late, and hopefully, from the looks of it, from what the majority of the teams, the manufacturers are saying, should I say, Gen 4 is being organised and introduced so much better, which you'd like to think is then going to have a better impact when we get to season 13. So touch wood, Bridgestone hopefully are also doing a good job. Let's see what happens, but I think it's going to be a case of we've just got to suck it up and kind of hope for the best, but it's FE, so we will.
So I want to talk to you about, you said something which I said in last show, where you said the speed of the car will get more eyeballs on the series, and I said I don't know if Formula E are going in the right direction with Gen 4 with speed, because I think in terms of electric racing and what an electric car needs and what we need to promote electric vehicles is we need to be showing off its range. Now, my question, okay, great. My question to you, right?
Fight.
What happens?
Yes.
What happens if speed doesn't work? What happens if speed doesn't bring the eyeballs? What do we do then? Because we've tried great racing, Formula E, great racing. Everyone said that, it's interesting, it's exciting. If speed doesn't bring fans to Formula E, what do Formula E do?
Okay, I'm going to throw a question back at you. Let's go back to Monaco, okay? Because it's the best way to compare ourselves to the other categories. Good look. For Formula E, a World Championship, may I add?
Yep.
Is it good for Formula E, which is a World Championship and obviously the leader for EV motorsport, to be slower than Formula 2 and pretty much on a par lap time-wise as Formula 3?
Could be like Max Verstappen. It doesn't matter.
You look at.
I don't think speed is.
In my eyes, okay? So let me answer you this then. Is it? Let's say we get to Gen 4 and we get to Monaco or wherever. We do qualifying, and lap times are only a couple of seconds off Formula 1, quicker than Formula 2 and Formula 3. Is that not going to raise your eyebrows? Is that not going to raise your eyebrows and make you think, hello?
No.
Are you not going to... Is that not going to catch your attention?
I'll tell you why it doesn't. An LMP hypercar can do similar stuff, right? And it doesn't raise my eyebrows. Do I watch WEC? No, I don't watch WEC. I watch the Le Mans 24 hours.
Because our attention span is dreadful.
I watch the Le Mans 24 hours because it's the biggest race. Do I watch any other? Do I watch any other WEC race? No, I don't.
One big difference. There's one absolutely massive difference. Which competition is Formula E compared to more than any other? Because it is, at the end of the day, a single-seater category. Formula 1. You are never, ever going to escape that. And the reason for that is Formula E itself are so often comparing themselves and bringing Formula 1 up in discussion. It literally happened the other way around on Sunday, which I know we'll discuss in a moment. But ultimately, FE, in my eyes, needs to get quicker. The cars, you see this top speed of 200 miles per hour. We've never gotten close to that. And I don't think we ever will. We need to hit that mark. We need to, the acceleration looks incredible because it's so quick. And that does impress you. Technology is only going to get better. And I think that's also going to happen as the cars get faster, because as they get faster, there's going to be more work done to them to make sure they're safe and that they can do those speeds in the correct manner. We need to get quicker. It's not a good look when you get to Monaco and you are 16, 17 seconds slower in qualifying. We're the pinnacle, and that's the key word, the pinnacle of electric motorsport. The pinnacle is only good enough to be 17 seconds slower than F1.
But F2 was like, we're only 5 seconds off. We're only 5 seconds off the F2 times, which are going to be marginally quicker than next season. The F2 qualifying time was a 1:21. We did a 1:26. Right, so
we're 5 seconds slower than
5
F2.
Seconds, all right, we're 5 seconds slower, but we're quicker than. But I don't think that's. So we're going to be there or thereabouts. But my question is, it's a lot of investment for Formula E Gen 4, right? And if it doesn't work, that's the big thing. I feel like they've gone full force, right? And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't get the eyeballs, it's a lot of money down the drain.
I don't think eyeballs matters. Yes,
But it
obviously
does
we'd love
matter.
to be. Yeah, obviously we'd love to be bigger, but the fact
Why
that
did
I mean, I
Mercedes
don't
leave?
know. I'm already
BMW
fat
leave?
enough,
Audi
but-
leave? It's because they got
Yes,
no return on
I know.
investment. And there's going to be a
I
higher
know.
return on investment in this series, in Gen 4.
Right, let's just
and then,
calm down for a moment. Everyone take a deep
No.
breath,
and
relax.
if
thing
they
is-
don't get the eyeballs, they're
thing
not
is,
going to make
it-
any money.
It's
What's
showing
funny?
improvement. That's what
We've got-
Formula E has
Who
always
cares?
been about.
It doesn't matter if you show improvement if the series is dead.
We've not even discussed George Russell yet. Oh my god. Okay, right, hold on. Can I? All right, hold on.
Seriously,
All right,
I knew this
Right, let
would
me
be a
go
good
for it.
topic. That's why I picked it.
let me go for this.
Oh
Okay,
my god.
guys. Actually, Pico made a really, really good point amongst my laughter. In that, the whole point of it, and for each generation, is that the technology continues to improve. With that comes the cars getting more powerful, faster, more impressive to watch. And obviously, as we've seen, reliability also does improve. We're not going to see the car, I may be wrong, and if I am, sue me for it, but we're not going to see the cars becoming less reliable, because actually you look at the technology in the EV market available today and what's being used for the Gen 4 is already so much more advanced than what we saw 4 years ago when the Gen 3 was being developed. So naturally it's just improving all the time. FE needs to get quicker. We cannot be 5 to 6 seconds slower at Monaco than a Formula 2 car, 17 seconds slower than F1. As we get quicker, it's going to change so many things, because ultimately, you've got to remember the whole thing about the eyeballs. Those who already watch Formula E are going to stick with it from Gen 3 into Gen 4. The whole thing for it, and for it to grow, is for us to attract the eyeballs of those who don't watch Formula E. If those who don't watch Formula E suddenly see a championship where the cars are doing consistently 190 miles per hour plus, only a couple of seconds off F1, quicker than F2, it's going to get them interested. If it doesn't, then I think we're just screwed, and we're never going to get their interest. But it will gain more interest, and that's just going to get our audience even bigger. It's going to intrigue more manufacturers to join. It's going to intrigue even better drivers to join, and more importantly, help us get even better venues on the calendar.
I hope you're right.
The one thing that I will sort of say about the speed improving and everything like that, I think once we get to Gen 4, we are sort of at the upper echelons of how much speed we can sort of do. I don't see us, like, if we do go to like Gen 5, Gen 6 down the road, everything like that, I don't see us getting hugely quicker. I think Gen 4 is going to be the last sort of big jump, because we've had sort of fairly big jumps from Gen 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. I think 4 will be the last big jump. I am more than comfortable, happy with having lap times between F2 and F1. Because the thing is, with the regulations in F1, they're supposed to have ridiculous amounts of downforce and everything like that. The Formula E car is designed not to have too much downforce whatsoever.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming that's going to be the case for Gen 4. Am I right, Nick?
Oh, you put me on the spot. How do I answer? All I'm going to say...
Is it still downforce minimal?
All I'm going to say is
you
that
can say yes or no.
I can't comment, but all I will say is that the reason I'm defending this so much is because...
You've seen it.
I'm going to say nothing, but all I can say is it is going to be amazing.
Bonkers.
This, for me, is going to be the biggest jump and the biggest step in Formula E's history. If this doesn't work, if the Gen 4 doesn't gain eyeballs, FE viewers, I genuinely don't know what will, because I have never been so impressed by something. I'm being very, very careful what I'm saying.
No, look, I want it to be successful as much as
you drunk in London.
I'm saying, I'm biting my lip, because there is a lot I can say, but yeah, all I'll say is
we'll say it off air, mate. Don't worry.
Right, I'm gonna park
it.
I'm gonna park it there because we've got 4 minutes. We wanted to talk about George Russell and what happened with Dan ticked him at the end.
Yes.
I thought it was a low blow. I didn't think it was necessary for him to even bring it up. I didn't, he could have just kept his mouth shut in a sense. I don't know why he felt the need to do it.
Okay. Well, first things first. Evening, George. Evening, Dan. Hope you're both well. First things first, Dan, why have you not included my name and caption in the post of mine you've taken? Because that would have been some nice views for me. A bit annoyed about that. It's done 87,000 views, so I think that's viral. It's also gotten comments from Jeff's commented, which is quite interesting, thinking that George is talking about him. Jake Hughes has also commented, so I'm very slowly rounding up FE grid on this.
I also commented. Whoa.
You also did. In my eyes, okay. First things first, all right. Give Dan the massive credit he deserves. He handled that.
Oh,
he couldn't have handled it better. It was hilarious. It was a hilarious response. The fact he's kind of turned into a positive. I think fair play to the guy. Thing with George, you've got to remember there are some circumstances here. George has just come out of a really intense F1 race where it was so hot, the adrenaline is still absolutely bubbling your system. You say things you don't necessarily mean. You've also got to remember the incident he'd just been involved in with Max Verstappen, which is arguably the most controversial incident of not only this season, but probably in the last couple of years, I would argue. It's a hard one because at the end of the day, George was asked the question, is there anybody else, other than Max, in any other championship who you think would do a move like that? Would you rather him say no, but then be lying, or just be honest? And I think the thing is, though, with this, I think you can't really look too much into it because you don't know. I don't know George or Dan personally. Of course, I know Dan professionally. You don't know if, for example, maybe they're friends. You never know. Maybe they've obviously they've raced against each other, so maybe they've grown up together. You don't know their relationship, whether they're joking about this personally behind the scenes and stuff. So it's difficult because I don't see that George did anything wrong, to be honest. Because ultimately, he's a Formula One race winner. He can kind of say what he wants, given that he's in Formula One and is doing good at it. But more importantly, it was jokey the way he said it. It wasn't seriously, but he was asked a question. So, and I'm somebody who quite likes it when drivers just honest, because it then creates these cool little back and forths and gets more people involved. So yeah, was it out of order? Perhaps a little bit, but I think there's so many outside factors to take into consideration that, this way, did Dan seem to care about it? Not really. And I think that kind of tells the story that actually it's a non-story.
Oh, of course. I think we all know that. But, it was just... when you're digging something up from 10 years ago, and, as I said earlier in the show, it's like, he probably's not... Dan's tried to change his perception around him, and he's tried to shrug off and, put that in the past
I agree with that
and move on, and then you're just... he's trying hard to move away from that person that he was, and then you keep bringing that person back. And it's just like, well, the poor guy is trying his hardest to reinvent himself, and people are still taking these cheap shots. And you just feel like...
Look at the bright side. George Russell clearly watches Formula E, so I'll take that any day of the week.
That's very true.
It's the thing, though. I get that point in that, Dan is trying to change his image. But this is where, unfortunately, it goes back to the point of the reason he's having to change his image is because of what he done. Obviously, George is a similar age of him, so knows exactly what he did. Lando Norris knows exactly what he did because he was in that race.
Yeah.
So there are so many things to consider, and it's almost like one of those things like, yes, Dan's trying to change his image and is doing a very good job of it. One thing I will say is that it's quite clear that Formula E have very much changed. It's going to sound the way they use Dan in certain, where over recent years it's always been every single clip of an angry radio message has been Dan, or somebody doing something wrong, it's always been Dan. Whereas now all of a sudden everything's positive, and it's almost like they're trying to force that down your throat a little bit. It doesn't feel like what Formula E are doing a natural. You almost wonder if things have been said behind the scenes of, can you do this more? Because actually the thing is though, like, Dan is a really, really good driver and a really good guy, and he's quick. I don't think he needs this kind of Formula E forcing all of this down us to get a message across. Because for those who watch Formula E, will know that Dan is not that driver he was so many years ago. He's actually a great talent. So we'll see. But I mean, I get both sides of it. I think there's so much adrenaline and everything in Formula One, and that's, George knows Dan quite clearly. Dan knows George. If it was something that really annoyed Dan, then I think his reaction would have been very different in my eyes. So I think at the end of the day, fans might see this as George having a low blow. Ultimately, I don't even think Dan sees it like that, in all honesty. I'd be wrong. Who knows?
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
No worries, and we'll catch you. Well, we'll see you in Berlin. Oh, not Berlin.
You will see me in Berlin.
See you in Berlin,
Yes.
and hopefully we'll speak Jakarta. I forgot about that race. But
Of course you will.
Of
course you will.
We'll see you for Jakarta.
Oh, see you later, guys.
See you
Bye,
later.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
I still think I got some rights. Like if
Just remember, at the end of the day, mate, it's just a chat show.
I know it's just a chat show,
Don't-
but that's the whole point, right?
Yeah,
That's the whole point.
don't- Don't get too animated.
You got to entertain the people somehow.
Yeah.
It's also an entertainment show. But I
Yeah.
do think if it is I get the argument for speed. I get it. But
Yeah, I mean, like, for me,
if it
we
doesn't
do need
work,
speed, but this is the last lot.
If
Like
it-
I said,
if
this is the last big jump.
we're 10 years in. Like, Formula One didn't make this leap in 10 years. I know the technology's moved forward, but
Yeah, we started at a fairly different point, and
but
where
if you,
technology's so much better now compared
but
to what it was in
if it doesn't get the eyeballs, then
1961.
I agree with Nick. We're screwed. I really do. Like, nothing is going.
I don't think we're screwed. We're fine as a niche. It's
know, but-
fine. Right, let's get more
some calls
people
in. I'm
in.
getting Nikki in,
'cause
'cause I reckon Nikki
we
can-
might finish on time tonight. Who
Well,
knows? Hi, Nikki.
There is space. If you want to come and join and have your say, you can always come and have your say. Nikki, you are on the FE bar. What would you like to say? I don't know if she's there at the minute. There we go. Nikki, hello, how are you?
Hear me?
Yep, we can
Yes,
hear you loud
yeah.
and clear.
Just remember.
Hello?
Hello.
Yep.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I was just
How are you?
listening. I was just listening to Nick and Jack's fight, which I found highly amusing.
Okay.
That's the whole point.
We've calmed him down. What would you like to talk about, Nikki?
What? Right. Number one is right. I personally believe, this is my opinion, that Taylor may have an opportunity to go to Nissan with Oliver. That is my view on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
So maybe they could bring someone like Alex Dunn from F2 into the new Ian Jameson, because he's doing pretty well at the moment, isn't he? In
I can't
F2.
see. I can't.
Yes,
I can't see that happening.
But yeah, I personally can't see Dunn ending up in F1. But I think he could come to Formula E. But the fact is that he's a McLaren driver and not an Ian James team driver.
So
which is the difference with Taylor Barnard. Because
but isn't Alex Dunn the reserve driver for McLaren Formula E?
he is,
but
because it's still
McLaren's
it's
gone.
still McLaren, but McLaren at the end of the year will go, and so
he'll go
it's
too.
sort of null and void.
I don't personally believe that Alex Dunn will get a space in Formula One, because at the moment he doesn't have the super license to be the reserve driver, and obviously Lando and Oscar are going to be there for at least 5 seasons.
Yeah, but we saw with Gabri Bortoleto, because he was a McLaren junior and he moved over to Sauber. The difference is that Gabri won both F2 and F3 back to back, and so got the credentials to do it. And yes, Alex is leading the F2 standings, but it's sort of feeling like a year where sort of anyone could win. It's not a particular, and this is no offense to any of the drivers in F2. They are still amazing racing drivers, but it's not exactly a strong field this year.
And also going back to Taylor, I personally believe that he deserves to be in a manufacturing team. So some maybe even going to Jaguar with Mitch.
Yep.
Or maybe if Oliver wins the championship, maybe going to Nissan with Oliver. That's my opinion.
No, I can see that happening.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
As I said earlier, if you're Jaguar, you've got a blank checkbook. Basically, say how much do you want, and write it down.
Well, not a blank checkbook, but you know,
Pretty much.
something
Well,
like
no,
that.
yeah, you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
If I was the financial department, either Nissan or one of the big manufacturers in Formula E, and you had a talent like Taylor Barnard, I would be literally fighting for him, because I truly believe that he deserves a shot at Jaguar, Envision, or even one of the big teams. Because I personally
Over to
believe
Envision.
one of the big
Envision's an
teams.
interesting one because they're
But
not.
isn't there a rumour going on that Sebastian Buemi's leaving the team?
That is a rumor, but there's no real links from McLaren over to Envision, and that's also a customer team. It's not a factory outfit, which Nissan and Jaguar are. Where I think if
But I think Taylor,
if the factory outfits aren't offering Taylor Barnard,
I think
then
Nissan would be, for me personally, coming from this point of view, being a McLaren fan, and knowing what I know of the powertrain, for me personally, it would be a better fit if he went with Oliver in the Nissan, because he pretty much knows the Nissan powertrain, than maybe going to a new team like Jaguar, for an example.
Maybe.
potentially, yeah.
Because I think he deserves a decent shot. And I truly believe in
Yeah,
the
but
next couple of seasons.
is he not getting a decent shot right now with McLaren? Because he's there or thereabout. He's had, what is it, 5 podiums now this season?
Yeah.
And for a rookie driver, I don't think we've seen a rookie driver do something
successful.
like this
I think the last rookie driver that
lately. Because even when Hughesy came in a couple of years ago,
Well,
he stuck it third on the grid in his first race, but he was never getting podiums like this.
I think the closest Taylor Barnard is to rookie pace was when Jake Dennis came in with BMW, because he was pretty cool in that first year that he came in 2021.
The only thing I will say about that year,
Jake Dennis struggled at the beginning.
is that anyone could have won that year, and Jake Dennis had an awful first 5 rounds, and it took the win in Valencia for him to sort of click, and after that he was fairly
Very good.
unstoppable.
But yeah, he struggled at the beginning. Taylor's just taken the
I'm not
series
being
right up to water.
disrespectful. I'm not being disrespectful. I think personally for Taylor to be, because he's a talented driver, I don't think putting him in a new team and rebuilding him again with the new McLaren outfit is going to be beneficial to him. I think he needs to be in a manufacturer team where he can have a shot at the championship.
I think, while I get that, 100% a manufacturer would be huge for Taylor. I don't think there's going to be much rebuilding at the Ian James team, because if the Ian James team does survive, it will be mostly the same guys and gals who are currently there. So it'll be,
and we also don't know.
It'll be basically the same team. It just have a different. They'll just have to paint the walls a different colour or something like that.
But we also don't know what's happening with Sam. Obviously, there's this massive rumour that he's going to WEC. Will he stay at the team to build it for a year before he goes into rec?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. To be honest,
honestly,
I'm not expecting it.
After this season, I personally wouldn't be surprised if Sam were to walk away. But and I'd be more surprised. At the start of the year, I would have said the writing's on the wall for someone like Seb Buemi, and then Seb Buemi won in Monaco,
and
now
decent
he's been there or thereabout. He had a decent weekend in Tokyo. I think he scored points this weekend as well.
In the first race.
I personally believe, right, that if I was Formula E, take the fact that he's a McLaren driver out of it, right? If I could see a talent like Taylor Barnard, right, I would be fighting to give him an absolute 100% shot at the championship.
100%.
100%.
100%.
And I would be very upset if that didn't happen, because I believe in the next couple of seasons, I think he will be a world champion, I truly believe, because he's so young as well, he'll be a multi-Formula E champion.
He could be a world champion next season.
Yeah, and honestly, And honestly, his performances this year is why I think he's probably the front runner to replace Cassidy
Yep.
at Jaguar. But that's the thing that it's still very early days. Like Cassidy was only rumored to leave about
Yeah,
what
but
was it,
it's
6 days
rumoured.
ago.
It's not actually set in
Yeah, no,
concrete, is
Yeah.
it?
it's not it's not confirmed, but Sam Smith's word is basically
Well,
taken verbatim at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But
But,
it's not being confirmed or it's not official, is what I'm
of
saying. But we
course.
can't take it as
100%.
right, Nikki, we got to call it there. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
bye bye.
Bye, 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 bye. I'm going to get Ricardo in. Hello, Ricardo. How are you?
Hello.
How are you? What would you like to talk about?
Well, in this theme of Nick Cassidy leaving,
Yeah.
while I was hearing you and Nikki, I was pointing out my thoughts on the driver market as a whole,
Yep.
Involving all in Nick Cassidy and the chain reactions that could happen in this driver market. So
Yep.
so Cassidy eventually leaves Jag, and
Yep.
I think four drivers will leave their teams, either their teams or Formula E entirely.
Okay.
So the thing is, I think Hughes will
Yep.
leave Maserati.
Yep.
Buemi retires from Formula E.
Yep.
Nato leaves Nissan.
Yep.
And maybe this is one that could make sense or not. But for me, to make sense, Jeff leaves Formula E. I think this is the year that we are seeing not the Jeff we saw in season 10, in season 9, and I think it could make sense. Because I'm with you, Jack. I don't think Cassidy to leave Jagger to go to Maserati would make any sense.
Yeah.
Or maybe a bit, but if only Maserati were ambitious to overtake the Penske for the main Stellantis team.
Yep.
So, with this said, I think with Jeff leaving, Cassidy goes to the Penske, and then
becomes the new Stellantis boy.
Yeah, basically. Well, not right away because they have Gunther, and Gunther is outperforming Jeff.
Yeah, but if Cassidy was to jump in the car with Gunther, who's winning?
Yeah, I think it would be Cassidy. I think it would.
I think it'd be close, but
yeah, maybe. So with Cassidy in Penske, then Hughes doesn't leave Formula E and goes to Envision, as Buemi retired. And Nato, who worked with Jag previously, he was the reserve driver in season 8. He goes to Jag, and then Porsche goes to Maserati. And so you think, well, Nato left Nissan for Jaguar, who is replacing him. There are two candidates.
Go on.
And they might change with each other. They are Taylor Barnard and Victor Martins.
Yeah,
Victor Martins tested with Nissan, and Taylor Barnard is at McLaren.
Yep.
Who is powered by Nissan. So either them will drive for the Ian James team or Nissan. So it could be Martins at Nissan and Barnard at the Ian James team, or the other way around.
I think the other way around is more likely.
Yeah, it could be, but there are animal seats. There is the possibility of Tictum going to Jaguar.
Yep.
And Hughes I thought as well Hughes could leave Formula E.
Yep.
But I think in my thinking, I think this is what makes sense. But the driver market at Formula E is crazy. So
yeah, as I said, the whole thing didn't make sense to me, right? And just doing some thinking, right? His contract ends this season, right? So we're going into the Gen 4 era. you know, there may have been a contract dispute between Jaguar and Cassidy, right? Maybe Jaguar wanted to tie him down for a long-term deal, and Cassidy was like, "No, I want a 1-year deal," right, or something like that. And there's been a fallout there. That makes sense. That could spark why he's leaving. Also, as we said earlier, you know, James Barkley's leaving. Phil Charles is already gone. What's going on at Jaguar behind the scenes? Maybe it's not as strong as what we think. So therefore, he's thinking this is a sinking ship. Therefore, get out. So there could be a number of different factors to why Nick is leaving. But yeah, I do agree. I think Victor Martins, obviously, I like that idea. If I'm Nissan, I wouldn't put Victor Martins in my car at this current moment, because if you're putting a championship together and you want a championship run, you put Barnard and Roland in, the two, you know they know Formula E, you know you're going to get the results, you put them in, and then you put Victor Martins in your V-carb team, right, your baby team, and you let him develop there. I think that makes more sense, where rather than shoehorning Victor Martins into a team where, you know, he might struggle at the beginning, who knows. But the only reason Martins... Go on.
I just want to point out, it's also worth pointing out that Ian James team may not be Nissan the year after.
That's also true.
So
that's also true.
I know there's some rumours.
But for one season, you could put Martins in for 1 season. You can put Martins in for 1 season and give him a little bit of experience. Whether he then struggles on this and pick up a second team and then Martins moves across, that could be something that happens. But I just think the only way for me Martins is in a Nissan seat next season is because, for whatever reason, Taylor Barnard did not want to leave the Ian James team. If Taylor Barnard wanted to stay and was like, no, I'm under contract here, I'm happy to stay, then yeah, you put Victor Martins in your team. But if that's the only, if Taylor Barnard basically doesn't budge, if Taylor Barnard's happy to move, you put Taylor Barnard in your team every day of the week.
Yeah, I think because Nissan are now in a place that they are fighting for the championship, so it's not like they had with Sash and Norman, for example. And right now, I don't think Nissan were thinking right away that they were fighting for the championship as a team. Yeah. Maybe with Oli, of course, they did it last year, but either they thought Norman would perform better.
Yep.
Or they just picked up Norman just to fill a seat.
Yep. Well, they also knew. They also
that
knew
seat
Norman,
was originally Sasha Fenestraz's.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it is what it is. But Ricardo, we've got to let you go. But thank you so much for coming on. I love the chat. We'll have to see what happens. We're properly into silly season now, and I'm sure we'll do a silly season FE bar at some point when things start to get a bit more interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon, guys. Cheers.
Ciao.
Cheers, Ricardo.
Right, we will get Chris in and finish with Lou. I think that's fine. And then if Mr. Edward Hunter wants to come on, we'll do that. Mr. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Thank you for waiting.
Good. Yeah.
What would you like to talk about?
Well, I say just quickly. I say I've literally just checked Instagram. Just popped up. Tictum of all people has just mentioned they are working hard to get back to Cape Town.
Formula E, I can talk about that if you want to. Formula E, I know Alberto Longo has visited Cape Town to have discussions. I'm not expecting it to be on the calendar, which should be announced on the 10th of June, by the way, so there will be an FE bar on the 10th of June. We might as well announce that now. Because the 10th of June we should find out what the calendar is and we can react instantly to it, because it probably will be announced about 5-6 p.m. in the evening. So we will have a show about that. I'm not expecting Cape Town, from all the rumours and everything that I've heard, I'm not expecting Cape Town to be on it, but they are working on going back to Cape Town. Whether that could be for Gen 4, who knows? Whether the track needs changing for Gen 4, who knows? But it is something that they are actively pursuing.
I mean, obviously, I'd love to go back there. I literally just checked Instagram before coming up, and it would literally just mention that, yeah, they are looking to go back.
Yeah, and the thing is, if there will be a TBC, on the calendar, but we're expecting that to be Jahama, if that is what the TBC is, in Madrid. So
From,
that's,
from what I've heard, they wanted no TBCs on the
yeah,
calendar.
but I think there will be a TBC.
Okay.
From what we've heard, that there will be a TBC, but that TBC is expected to be Madrid. And going to Jahama, because that's Formula E in it. That's Formula E going, oh, hang on a second. It's an easy thing to put on the calendar because it's a racetrack. It's not miles away from Madrid, and a Gen 4 car can race on there. Therefore, happy days. We've built a good relationship with them. We might as well stick them on the calendar, and we get a race in Spain. And I think that's a good thing. So I think that's where we're going for, and it's an easier one to go on. And there must be some reasons why it's a TBC thing still to sort out, because it's probably a last minute kind of contract situation, sorting it all out type deal. But then come October, or maybe the summer, we are the summer, so it'll be October, we'll get the actual decision for that TBC. I may be wrong. Maybe come the 10th, it might actually be on the calendar, but we're not expecting it to be.
Let's see. And to be fair, what I was going to chat about is, well, funnily enough, the calendar itself.
Yep.
And races we've just had. Why are we in Southeast Asia in monsoon season?
Don't ask me. Don't know.
That's like we've had like 3 wet races in the last season. I know Monaco's Monaco.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like Monaco, it can
happen.
rain anytime. There's its own little microclimate. But it just, to me, just seems like
maybe on
going-
purpose for the Gen 4 Bridgestone tyre?
I think it's for logistical issues, because I know that Jakarta's always been June, and so to pair that up with Shanghai, because it was in the same location last year. Now Tokyo was obviously moved because last year it was at the end of March, I think it was, and this year it was mid-May. I'm fairly certain that Tokyo will be after Jakarta next year and be the penultimate round of the season. So it will go. Shanghai will still be in the same spot. Then we'll go to Jakarta. Then we'll have Tokyo, and then the season finale in London. So Tokyo does get moved, and it will be hotter. But I'm not sure if that escapes monsoon season, because it's going to be about. It's going to be about a month later.
Bridgestone are making a monsoon tyre.
Yeah.
So we need to use it at some point.
But isn't that for Gen 4 and not next season?
I know that is for Gen 4, but in terms of it being in the calendar, it being where it is on the calendar, I suppose it was more tongue-in-cheek. But in terms of, if we are going to make a monsoon tyre, and if we might, it'd be great to actually use it maybe once.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it would be interesting at least to have a wet race, a monsoon race, if we've got the tyre, but we don't.
Yeah, at the moment we don't. But, so I don't know. It's a question for Alberto Longo, to be honest with you. But
yeah, it just seems silly to me that we've just gone. I know, yes, I'm far from an expert on calendars and international weather, but it just seems like this should have been seen from a while ago. And yeah, unfortunately, wet races don't work in Formula E, especially at permanent circuits, because how many cars did we see spinning compared to how many actually crashed out?
We saw a few spin, and we saw a few spin because the field spread was so bad they hardly lost any positions.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It, like, I think I remember during the race, like Japan, you had like 5 seconds a lap slower between attack mode and regular.
Yep.
China, it was 2.
Yeah, China, that was interesting for me, that attack mode just did not work. It really
the reason it didn't is because, you just had to just give it your roll, and if you span, oh well, you tried.
Yeah, you tried, I suppose.
And you just literally, like, there was no...
So maybe it was a risk element.
Yeah, well, I think it was really a risk element, because if the walls are right there, say, I much prefer street circuits. That's just my personal preference. Because at the end of the day, you go wrong, that's kind of the end of your race, and you're more risk averse, and it is who's willing to meet that risk. There was no risk under that rain.
Yeah.
And that's why the drivers just drove off at I wouldn't say full speed, but as fast as they could, rather than as fast as they dared.
Yep. No, that
which,
makes sense.
So
but it's a risk. Like last season, though, with Shanghai, we were fine. We had 2 dry races. It was at the same time. But this year we got 1 dry, 1 wet. So
yeah, and it is that time of year. So I did have a look. It's like 1 in every 3 days.
So
is wet over there. But yeah, to me, I think Japan probably should have stayed in March. I mean, as penultimate race of the season. I mean, obviously,
the thing is, there was nothing sort of paired up with this year because we were in Miami, mid-March. So mid-March, mid-April. Where are we?
we're in.
Nothing in March. We were technically in Miami in March, so you just weren't racing.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah. The TBC,
Forgot about
Thailand, whatever it was.
I know. That shows how memorable that was.
But it also shows how long ago that feels now. Like it feels like
I know.
so long ago.
It was only like 2.5 months ago.
It's weird. It's weird, isn't it? It's so weird. Time is such a strange element.
It has felt long. I mean, think back to Sao Paulo. I mean, Mitch Evans.
We're almost halfway through the calendar year.
Oh god.
Soon it'll be 2026. Then it'll be death.
Yeah, that's true.
Was that Lucas Graham song, innit? Soon I'll be 60 years old and stuff like that.
Yeah, But
anyway.
Speaking of that, we've got a random stat though. Jaguar are the only team that's had both drivers win a race.
That is true.
That is crazy.
I know.
But yet Mitch Evans' next best result is 14th.
14th, yeah.
Absolutely
when I checked that, I couldn't believe that. And say Max Gunther, the only other driver to win more than 1 race.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's some of the stats on there are absolutely insane this season. I say before I said last time I was on, like this is probably the closest season we've ever had.
Yep.
If you take out Oliver Rowland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, like when I was in Madrid, like I was going like, okay, this is the most excited I've been for a Formula E season in recent years because of like the attack, what the attack mode was going to be like and everything. And honestly, I think we've had some really good races, and Shanghai was, but I think we've had a fairly solid season so far.
Indeed.
Well, we have, and we absolutely have. I'd say every single team on the podium by Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been insane. Brilliant. But there's only been 4 teams have both drivers on the podium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it has been.
Everything.
I think Kiro going to Porsche has really just brought. Everyone's had to step up their game basically, and so forth. But Chris, we've got to cap it there because it's like very close to 10 o'clock and we've got to get Lou on. So
yeah, no worries.
Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Cheers, gents.
See you later.
Cheers. See you later.
Cheers. Ta-ra.
Let's get Lou on. Hi, Lou. Welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening. What would you like to talk about?
I've got a guess.
Yeah, the great race on Saturday for Kiro and Dan, for example. The racing in general this weekend with rain.
Yep.
Maybe some certain Formula One driver.
Or maybe something.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah.
Just very. It was an amazing drive from Dan. Let's just cap the Saturday thing off. It was an amazing drive. It was very unlucky not to get on the podium, and it just I think it just shows how far Dan has come as a driver. Like and he's proving what he's saying, that we just need, to get it right. I need the car, and now that he's kind of got a car, he's doing bits with it.
Definitely. To be fair, I also think previous years this would have been possible if the car was there. So it's not that Dan now suddenly is getting it. That was also possible in previous years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really they're really putting it together. It really took some time to understand the car. They had some issues with that. But yeah, they're really now putting it together and showing it. And still, sometimes it's difficult because getting the tires into the right windows and making them work was still a task this weekend.
Yep.
So there are still things to get right, and they're still a small team. So, but yeah, it's insane that they're now consistently decent.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturday race showed that they made the right calls. The team was really good. The communications were great on the radio. Listening to that, yeah, it was really a good execution.
Yeah, it was a really good race. Really,
Yeah.
really happy for Dan. And as I said, it's just showing how good he is. But let's move on to the elephant in the room and get your views on what George Russell with his little, I called it a low blow on Dan. What was your opinions as a Dan Tickton fan?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's been like a decade at this point. And we're still talking about it. It's kind of insane in a way. It felt needed and just very cheap to do that, and also not having the balls then to say what you want to say. When you want to throw someone on the bus, use their name.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I get that. Like, you basically implied it, but then why didn't you just say Dan Tickton?
Yeah, it's made it even more cheap from George for me, to be honest. Somewhat, I'm not really surprised by that because George is always a bit trying to act like a saint and saying the things that he thinks people will think is good. So it's not really a surprise to me.
Yeah,
and also like it's also a fairly stupid thing to compare what Max did and what Dan did.
Yeah.
Because there are just so many differences. Max is 28 years old at this point. Dan was a kid.
Yep.
Dan was under pressure of not having sponsorship and or a future in racing.
Yep. And Max doesn't have that.
Max does not have that issue at all.
Yep.
Dan got punished. He apologized, and he never did something like that again.
Yep.
Max normally doesn't apologize. He did this time, which is good. Hopefully that is a thing that stays. But he's done this before, and he will hopefully not do it again. But I have my doubts about that.
Yeah.
So it's not a fair comparison at all from that point of view. And making a comparison is stupid in itself because it's so long ago, and it's just not correct in this way.
Yeah, Nick tried to make a point which I was skeptical about, where he said, we don't know how close they are and if it was in a jokey tone.
True.
But then he would have known. Nick's obviously privy to the audio, so he would have known if it was in a jokey tone or not. And obviously,
to be fair, if it was a jokey tone, and then I think the journalists in questions are not doing the right job because that was not said in the tweets and everything. So if that's how it's said, then you should also put that in the tweets because that's the context it's being said in.
And
so if that's the case, that's very bad.
That I agree with you, right? So that's what makes me think it wasn't said in a jokey tone. But then I do agree with what Nick said, that he has come from the heat of the battle. But he has said his side of the story many times and probably should have had a bit of time to have calmed down. And kind of not done that. But then, if George was laughing when he said that, I don't know, maybe Dan Tickton. He didn't even say Dan Tickton, but then you kind of get the gist of, he's making, a light-hearted joke, and it should have been reported in that way, that he said it in that way. But I don't think George said it in that way. I think George just went up with it. And because he basically said, well, you know who, but I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to say the name. That's what, for me, I was like, why? Like, if you joked about it, Fez, right? I'll say, all right, and, and if he had a little chuckle and said, haha, maybe Dan Tickton, then you go, all right, you can tell he's, having a little bit of a laugh about it. But I don't think that's what happened. So therefore, I'm like, I'm not 100% sure on that one. And the way that, it's been reported in the media today, kind of suggested as well that, he took a low blow, he took a low shot at Dan Tickton.
Yeah, it was not needed. So yeah, it's just stupid. I loved Dan's response on it, to be honest.
Yeah.
That was.
I think he handled it brilliantly. We said that earlier.
Yeah, that was really really good response.
Right, Lou, it's been an absolute privilege.
Yes.
We're just out of time. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
No worries.
Good evening.
And you.
Cheers.
There we go. Yeah, I do agree with Nick that it's a little bit of a non-story, and I know we have talked about it today, but I feel like we had to talk about it today because it was what had come on. I do agree with that, but then I still don't understand the need for it. I know he was asked the question, do you think that, but and I know Nick said, do you want him to be honest? I'd rather him be honest and say what was on his mind and not say no. But then, like, what does George get out of saying Dan for? What does he get? Nothing. He's just fueling. Oh yeah. Let's everybody. I think it was a ill-advised comment. I think if he was to do it again, I don't think he would say it, because I think he'd say in his head, but I actually think, no, I'm not going to say that, because that's just like, what is the point? There was just absolutely no point for me for why he did that.
Yeah, no, it was, it wasn't great from George, and I think lots of people lost a little bit of respect for him there. The thing is, that's what people like to do. And I've met so many people, like even in the last few years, saying that Dan Ticktum's a so and so, and I mean I can't say it because
you'll get told off.
I'll get told off by you because I should have a swear jar for this show. But
I'd be rich on the fines I'd make.
Yeah, you really would. And so it's disappointing that people tend to bring it up. I see it in a similar vein to Romano, who used to race in Moto3, Moto2, and he was damn quick. He won his second ever race in Moto3 back in 2012. But the thing is, he just sort of stayed in the lower classes. He finally got a break up to Moto2, and then he was going down a straight in Misano and pulled the opposition a break, which got him originally banned for life, and then it got re-looked at, and it was only 2 years, and so he came back from Moto3. But you do something like that, and you should be punished. And Dan was punished. He had a 2-year suspension, but he was allowed to come back, and
here we are today.
As long as he was good, and I think he's been fairly good. Yes, he comes out with the odd thing, like the Monaco incident. Let's put it that way. But
that I don't mind.
But yeah, I think with that, I think his comment there was over the line in the sand. But
yeah, here we go. Right,
those comments are few and far between now. So
right, let's wrap up the show.
Yeah.
So we will be back on the 10th of June to react to the calendar, right? And seeing what's happening, what the TBCs are. You can have your say on the calendar and so forth. So 10th of June. We are also still working very hard to try and secure another guest to come on the show. Fingers crossed, everything crossed. Hopefully we can get that sorted for June as well. So once we have it confirmed, we will let you know. But at the moment it's not confirmed, but it's very close.
So you get an advantage on knowing in the Discord.
Yes.
So,
and if you haven't joined the Discord yet,
it's usually about like 30 minutes, but like you still get to find out.
You'll get to find out first.
So join the Discord. Exclamation mark slash Discord. Exclamation mark Discord in the chat. I can't remember.
No hints, but it's a good one.
No hints.
No hints, but it is a good one.
It's someone from the Formula E paddock.
Oh well, paddock world, same thing. But so someone from the Formula E paddock will be hopefully joining us at some point in June, or July. But whenever we can get it, we could get it. But we are working on guests, and we do want to try and get a few more on. But yeah, thank you for watching. I want to just shout out Natalie, Nikki, Chris, Ricardo, Lou, and Nikki was also in chat. Who are our members, and thank you very much for being a member. I was going to try and shout at the beginning when we just got stuck into it, but I know most of you are still watching and listening, so, and some of you obviously came on the show tonight, so thank you very much. As well, if you would like to become a member, you can. You just hit join and you help this amazing community grow further, and us help you bring better content to you about the world of Formula E. But thank you so much for listening and watching, and we will see you next week. Ciao.